Where did the little gnats come from that are in here?
No, it's like they just hatched.
Yeah. If you see us going like this, there's some little bugs flying around. Okay.
Can I help? Okay.
No, it's live stream. Oh, there's Dan.
Ah, perfect timing. We were just waiting for Deanne. And then if we could share my screen again, that would be great.
Oh, let me try and get her fixed. Okay.
Yeah, it just started streaming.
Come on. Come on.
And Matt, if we could go back a couple slides.
I'm trying to get it.
Oh,
to do
thank
this.
you.
I'm doing it.
Perfect. Okay, back on track. This time, no hiccups. We got this. All right. So as you can see, these organizations are with contracts. Yes.
Start all the way at the beginning since we just started.
Sure, we could. Yeah.
I mean, it was only a lead in. Oh, no. I mean, so for those watching on YouTube, we called the meeting to order. We did roll call and we're about to start a presentation for the work session that we have tonight on the 2022 draft budget.
Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, if you could go to the second one. All right, so what we're going to cover tonight is when the money goes to other organizations, as well as touch on some of our fees, as well as kind of discuss the elective deficit that we have in our budget currently and how far we can go with that. So broken up the organizations that the money goes to into 4 categories: nonprofit organizations within our community, organizations with contracts that have committed funds, and they either have a line item or they have a contract with us with those committed funds. Also shared services with the county, and then membership dues. Next slide, please. All right, so these organizations are the organizations with contracts that have committed funds. And so we'll start first. I know there was some discussion about the visitor center because they do have a $40,000, well, now it's actually $42,000 line item in our budget. And this has been, and then we have ski joring, 4th of July, summer sound. So visitor center is a little different because it's a service that we pay for and they run it for us, and then like all year long, as opposed to if we just had one event that was run kind of like this new one with summer sounds. And then thinking about accountability, we review the terms of the contract and the deliverables, and that's kind of been the traditional way of accountability as I understand it. So the total requested from these is $80,000. I do have Deanne Gallegos here representing the Chamber of Commerce, who contracts with us to run the visitor center. And she has a short presentation because I'm trying to give everyone an opportunity to get in front of you all, especially when it has to do with funding requests. So Deanne, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have the ability to share your screen, or would you like us to pull up your presentation?
I'll have it do. I just got off a PIO SAR call and my screen sharing wasn't working on this. So would you please do that, Gloria?
Yep. And you can start talking if you'd like.
Sure. So most of you, I think there's a few of you who did not get this presentation last year, but I'll just go through briefly what was the history of the partnership between the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitor Center, the benefit comparison of financials from last year to this year, where we're at year to date, the budget, and then questions.
Let me find it real quick.
We're working on it.
No worries.
We got a new computer up here and everything is taking me by surprise today.
I think it's the solar flare storm. This has been like glitches in cell phones and computers, and it's been a lot.
Yeah, it has.
And then just so this group's know, Gloria and I met on Friday, right? We met Friday morning and went over the year-to-date profit and loss budget in detail. And then I kind of gave Gloria more in-depth definition of how we got here in the partnership and kind of the services that are provided for the town of Silverton. And then I'll give you guys a brief summaries of that.
Almost there. No, I'm not. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to share it from my computer since I am on here. So if you could, thank you. And we'll just put that up here. All right, can everyone see that? No, no one can see that, can you? Only me, okay. Let me download it.
And then just so this group knows, I'm working on a end of season tourism report. And then next Monday, I'll give you kind of a synopsis of what is the chamber doing? What is the marketing plan? And then as many analytics and stats that I can get to compare from 2020, but definitely focusing on 2021. And then where we think we're headed for next year.
All right, I got you up, Dan.
All right, perfect. So I kind of already went through this screen. Gloria, would you go to the next screen? And then just back one. There you go. So Silverton Chamber of Commerce is one of the longest standing local independent nonprofits, 501(c)s established in 1957. And the partnership between the chamber and the town of Silverton's Visitor Center started in 1988. The chamber is funded by business memberships, advertising sales, and occasional grants as an independent nonprofit, and then I work for a board 7 year round, and then 2 summer seats. The visitor center is actually a function of the town of Silverton, and that was established, that relationship and the visitor center in 1988. So if you think about it, that was coming out of the mining days. They were starting to switch gears, see that mining was no longer an economy and thought we have to have a visitor center. So the visitor center is funded by bookstore sales. I've bulked up the bookstore on the town of Silverton, 42,000 annual contract, and then donations. And then next screen. Just quickly, this is the plaque down there. It was Sunnyside Gold that donated that building. It used to kind of be over by the power plant, over by the dump. They donated it to the town of the Silverton, so it could become the visitor center. And this was it being moved down Main Street in 1987. Next screen. Benefit. What is a benefit of a visitor center in any community? You meet and greet visitors face to face, answer their questions, what to do, where to go, what's open, take phone calls, emails, brochure mailings to visitors, and then also communication out to our local business owners or locals. We do still have that partnership with BLM, U.S. Forest Service. They fund a trail ambassador through San Juan Mountain Association, and then we host them down there in the summer. And this year it was out at the Outdoor Research Tiny Home, and then that's kind of the trails expert 6 days a week. Partnership between Town of Silverton and Chamber of Commerce, again, has been going on just to ensure that the visitor center to the community is open really 7 days a week. And then it's a community hub also for information, services, During emergencies, we figured out, I think it was during the Great Divide Fire, we were one of the last standing old school, I call them old school, but I think they're called pot lines, but landlines in the town. And so we had internet, we had the phone, and we were actually fielding phone calls from people's family members, people coming down, getting on their computer. And so we're definitely going to keep that old school landline down there. What goes on down there? There's public restrooms, there's dumpsters, there's a little small park, the track, the baseball field, the skate ramp, and the water dispenser kiosk. And then it's located at the entrance of town, close to the Y, where it is the most visible coming into the community. Most communities do like to have their visitor center on the edge as coming into town, kind of like Uray. Bigger towns, I noticed Montrose, Grand Junction, Durango, put them in the heart of their downtowns. Smaller towns, you want to get them off the highway. Next slide. Visitor center operations. We are open 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And some holidays like Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Easter, there's a few holidays that we are closed. Otherwise, we are open 7 days a week, year round. It takes 2 to 3 staff members with 1 daily shift. During 2020, I was tasked with really condensing the budget and really analyzing operations. And that had started with John Ryder and now working with Gloria. We got it down to the 1 person inside the building, the trails ambassador outside. And then I do have to have about 3 members that are rovers that can be called in to, cover any shifts. And I switch, summer staff from winter staff. And so at all times I have about 2 to 3 staff members, again, with 1 daily shift. I do have a bookkeeper that manages all the finances, the taxes, the payroll. So I don't do any of that. We actually have a bookkeeper who manages all of that. And then we have the 1 San Juan Mountain Association staffer through the summer, which has been amazing. Me personally, for the chamber, as part of this contract with the chamber, I am on call 7 days a week, 362 days for my staff, as well as the San Juan Mountain Association staff. So you have to have a point of contact because of any day of the week that the visitor center is open, and that's my job. June through September, we have the San Juan Mountain Association Trails Ambassador that partnered with the Chamber, the BLM, the U.S. Forest Service. This started under Elijah Waters, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And they're there 6 days a week. They take usually Monday or Tuesday off, and she usually has at least 2 staff members herself. And then again, they partnered with Outdoor Research to bring down that tiny home. They did have it at Ice Lakes, but the marmots wreaked havoc in that poor little thing. And so now we brought it to the visitor center, and believing it's kind of an attraction. People want to know what's going on, and it kind of gave that staff the ability to work outside, which was a shift during the pandemic that they actually enjoy. What the chamber does do for the visitor center, I do want to express it has nothing to really do with the chamber. When people call, they have no idea if you're a chamber member or not. That staff works for the community. And so they promote everyone and anyone. And what the chamber does do is we manage the staff, the day-to-day, keeping it open the 7 days a week. So those staff report to me. Bookstore, ordering all the merchandise and paying attention to what works and doesn't work in the bookstore. All expenses, oversee the bookkeeping, the payroll taxes, the end of year taxes. We actually file the end of year stuff. Also, we're responsible for that. And then all day-to-day operations, reports, financials. And our administration fee in the end is $4,999.92. Not that we're counting every penny, but it ends up being about $96 a week that the chamber, not me, that the chamber makes for ensuring that this service is open to the community 7 days a week. And that partnership has been going on since the inception of the visitor center. And next slide. So what are some of the comparisons we saw from 2020 to 2021, keeping in mind that was the pandemic, and shaving expenses, which really meant some hours of operation. We kind of shortened the hours that we could keep it open. The visitor center ends up taking 63 at the low point up to we've hit the high water mark of in the 70, I think it was 78 was where we were getting to in 2018, 2019, and having only that 42,000 from the town, I realized we have to make it up for donations. We have to make it up in the bookstore. We need this function to fund itself without coming back to the town saying, hey, you need to give us a little more to make this happen. So these are some of the ways that we've done that. We kept with the 10 to 3, but kept it open 7 days a week. Merchandise sales have actually increased. We've added some gift items down there. I learned a lot when I had my store, what sells, what doesn't sell. Donations are slightly up. That was kind of a tactic for us, was to get donations. We actually physically have had people in the building for 2021. So we're seeing donations go back up, visitations up, telephone calls, book and map sales are always our top two sale earners. And then gifts, going more towards little gifts, was something new, and we are seeing that go up. Next slide, Gloria. And so some of the things in the budget, it has been the same ask of the town of Silverton. And the only reason I say 7 years is because that's my reference. That's how long I've been in this position, and that's what I know. And it takes 73 to 72K. Again, we were hitting into the red, saw that this was not sustainable, and started chipping away at things that we could do to ensure that it was still 7 days a week, but not going into red, and at least funding itself. And then we have not requested any more than the 42K in the last 7 years. And again, I don't have prior knowledge as to what that ask was before that. We have not requested an administration fee in the last 7 years, but I would like to slowly increase that, but also do that through the bookstore sales, not necessarily the town of Silverton, but $96 a week. Being a part-time chamber director, it takes a lot of work. So we'd like to maybe make it a little more beneficial for the chamber, as opposed to just being goodwill and only making a little less than 5,000. Staffing, personnel, administration, fee, and hours all depend on the operations and the budget. That we're trying to keep it all within that house and not really coming back to the town of Silverton. Bulking up the bookstore is really the only way we're going to be able to do that, and keeping the hours 10 to 3. So what that meant from our 2019 budget was we used to do 9 to 4, and so we shaved a couple hours off in the day, which means less sales. So how do we get the most sales in that 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. hours of operation? So again, create a plan to continue to increase donations from our guests. And then in 2018, we used to get all the donations when the water was just open source. And people would come in and give it, and that went to the operation of the visitor center. That now goes to the town to help pay for the water kiosk. And then last but not least, hopefully you guys had time or were able to look over the year to date or the comparison from 2020 to 2021, where we're at year to date. And if you have any questions for me. And my slides are done, Miss Gloria. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne, and thank you for being able to start 10 minutes early. I appreciate it. I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I was wondering, so I was crunching the numbers, and it looks like just on hard costs, the merchandise nets about $14,000. So that's awesome. And that definitely is a big offset for the payroll expenses and other things that allow the visitor center to provide a pretty important function for the community. I was wondering if there's anything else that you see from your seat that can optimize how we provide the best possible service to visitors, and maybe even turn this into a overall profitable venture, where right now I know the P&L shows a net profit of 5,600, but that includes the 35,000 from the town. So it really nets out to like a -30 from the town's perspective. And I'm wondering if there's a way we could do it where it actually, like, maybe we make a larger contribution one year to kickstart something, but then it can break even every year after that so that it doesn't require an annual $35,000 or $40,000 contribution.
So, Mayor Furman, I think it's really approaching the property as a whole. Honestly, I mean, yes, there's the visitor center, right? But the visitor center is in this big building. And so I can continue to build the bookstore, which I will do, and, you know, have that offset. But in the end, it's dollars and cents. Like, how do we get money coming in from the people utilizing those services, right? And so I think that building has some opportunity, depending on how you guys actually look. Are you looking at just the visitor center as the service of you know, locals being down there every day? Or are we looking at the visitor center as a whole? Let's say, like, you know, the way the water kiosk ended up being, that ended up not giving water for free. It ended up paying for the machine. That became a commodity. Well, I don't know that it's paid for itself yet, I got to be honest. But it will, right? And so I think there's some low hanging fruit down there on the property. Now, that being said, we did have a running event like down there that, you know, helped with the events, and it didn't really seem like a good fit. But there's some empty offices there. I think if we looked at the property as a whole, there would be opportunity for that town plaza, really, you know, maybe to invest in a little bit into it. Does that make sense?
That does. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I feel like the chamber and the town are partners in this business venture. And if we can figure out a way to cover all of the payroll costs by increasing traffic or sales, or like you said, optimizing the building use to generate other lines of revenue, then we can turn this into like a very easy budget item.
Yes. The one really important conversation I would just like to say is maybe what is the long-term plan with the youth center? Because when you do have kids in the building, you have to have a different brain set, a different mindset. Okay, who are you really inviting in or renting office spaces, as opposed if maybe they had a longer term plan outside of the building. So that's definitely a question that we should broach eventually with the school.
Awesome. Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna come up with the answers tonight. I'm just planting the seed for us to brainstorm for the next few years.
Yes, that's an amazing property down there. You know, if you look at our track and our baseball field and the little park, like if we, at some point, if we spend some time and energy down there and think of it as a campus, I think there's a lot of opportunity for that part of town.
Awesome. Well, trustees, any other questions for Deanne or discussion? Jim?
Yes, thank you. Dan, you're doing a great job.
Thanks, Harper.
I've been a part of the board for almost 12 years now, if not 12 years now. And I've seen different folks come and go, and you're doing a great job. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else? Yeah, Jess?
Is now a good time to talk about the deferred maintenance on the building? It seems like that we could spend a little extra money and upgrade some plumbing fixtures in the building and possibly some light fixtures. Deanne, do you see any immediate needs that we would need to cover within the next year, or is that something that we can work towards in the next couple of years?
You're absolutely correct, Jess. And we kind of all discussed this last year. I think just some simple, maybe weatherizing. And then I have to say that front staircase is more than sketchy. Like, we have people slip and fall. It's painted. It's just putting sand out there. If there's a way we could think of putting maybe metal grates that would add traction, not be so slippery when it's shoveled. I think there are some immediate safety concerns going into the winter. And then that poor building would love a little nip and tuck and some love. Yes, that would be amazing. And maybe that's part of the long-term investment plan in that property.
Sally?
Is the visitor center in the facilities list of properties that we go through for that committee? I know the committee just kind of got morphed into like parks, rec, facilities and events. Is that in Todd's list? I wonder if maybe we can just,
It
I
is,
can't
yes.
remember off the top of my head, but it would be nice to include that there.
It is on his
Okay.
list, and one of the top things actually on his list for the visitor center is an ADA ramp.
Yeah.
So making it accessible and redoing those front steps, as well as a fire escape for the top, for the second story. So those two, I think, would be, I know that they're on the top of his list on that facility.
Great.
But yes, it is something that we do maintain. or we
Yeah,
should.
thanks for bringing that up, Jess.
Is there anything else you'd like the trustees to discuss?
On this particular
Yeah.
topic? No, I just really wanted to give the opportunity to learn more about the visitor center and kind of the operations there and see how that all works.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Sally?
Sorry, I had one other question. And Deanna, I'm not sure if this is for the chamber side or for the visitor center side, but you mentioned that you had some statistics on usage and that kind of thing. Is that a question for chamber or a question for visitor center, or what is the delineation there?
So next week, I'm gonna do a presentation, like all numbers we could get our hands on to date for you guys, and just what is the market, what is silvertoncolorado.coming, what is Visit Silverton? So yes, we literally click every person who enters that building. So we have hard numbers of usage. So we can predict time of year, trends, all of that. And you will get that in that next presentation. And we'll do all things tourism that I can get my hands on, just ending the season yesterday.
Great, thanks.
Well, awesome. Unless there's any last questions or comments?
Screen again for that presentation. I can't get.
Yeah, I think that's it. Deanne, thank you so much for presenting tonight and joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. You guys have a good evening.
You as well.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So does anyone have any other questions regarding organizations with contracts that have committed funds? I just wanted to go a high level overview on ski joring. They are going to be requesting an additional $10,000 on Monday night's meeting. So wanted to give you guys a little heads up on that. But we do, in our contract, it's 5,000. And then 4th of July committee we've talked about, and then Summer Sounds, that's a new one. So these are kind of the committed contractual organizations in which those funds go to.
So I think the only one that we didn't talk about the last meeting was ski joring. The question I have, which isn't really about the budget and predates you, so you might not know the answer, but do you have any idea what happened with the documentary that they were filming last year that?
Yes.
Okay.
And so they are about to release it, but the videographer would like to get some shots from this year and add them to them to make it a bigger production. But that was something that I was going to have them bring up at our next meeting on the 8th.
Got it. And in normal years where we host the event, has it always been 5, or have we done 10 before? We dropped down to 5 for last year and then we're going back up to 10, or?
I'm just going on our contract, and our contract said 5.
Okay. And then is the expectation that we make the same in-kind level of donation that we do in a typical year, which is fairly significant with like putting all the snow on the street and?
Yes, that would be the expectation as well. So, yeah, and I have that on the agenda for November 8th. So we'll have some representatives from the ski joring. Is it a committee or a club, or from the committee?
Okay. So we will be talking about this. We don't need to make any decision. Well, it's a work session, so we're not making decisions tonight, but we won't be asked to make any budget decisions on ski joring until after that presentation.
Correct.
Awesome.
Correct.
Cool.
Yep. But I did want to throw it in here so that it was on your radar as where to categorize it.
Perfect.
Next slide. So going off of Deanne's conversation with thinking about, you know, where this $40,000 or $42,000 comes from. I found a resolution 2016 where all lodging and camping fees collected actually go back into this specific line items. Now this all does go into the general fund. So when you ask me like, what exactly did we take that out of? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you if we've spent money on the visitor center, the parks, the buildings, the grounds, or the community. So it's kind of fluid there, if that makes sense. So this kind of gives you an idea of what we've done in the past as far as lodging fees goes. I didn't provide a year-to-date yet because we're still collecting them, and it might not look like it's very much yet, but it will. But I really just wanted to put this out in front of you to kind of think about how we do fund that particular service.
Sally?
Okay, so what is different? How do we distinguish lodging fees from lodging taxes? Are those two separate things, or is it one and the same?
They are different. So lodging fees are collected by the town, and a lodging tax is collected by the county. So lodging fees is just based on the number of beds and or campsites, or I think it's beds, campsites. I think those are the two.
VRBOs.
Oh, and VRBOs, that's it. So those are the three that we collect in town. Now, the lodging tax is put on to, like, if you stay the night at a hotel, and that's added on from the customer side. But we take it from the businesses.
Okay, and does the town see any of the lodging taxes, or does that all go to the county?
So the lodging tax is typically dedicated to like marketing or tourism or anything that would attract tourism. And that is given out by the county specifically. But we have benefited from that. We just actually received $10,000 in May from the county because we applied for their lodging tax, a portion of their lodging tax. So. Did you?
I was just going to clarify that the taxes and fees are really the same, but they're collected the same way, respectively by the town and county.
Yeah.
And that, you know, most hotels or VRBO owners pass those both costs along as part of the bill. Like if someone gets an itemized bill, it says like sales tax 10.4%, county lodging tax 2%, and then like lodging fee, however much it's, you know, it's $1 per night for a campground. It's $3 per night for a VRBO. It's $2 per night for hotels.
VRBO.
Or it's $4 for the VRBO. But so they're collected by the business, and then the town and county respectively collect them from them the same way.
Great clarification.
And so then how does the town, is that just like on an honor system?
Yeah, I mean, well, technically we do know, you know, how many beds someone has and how many campsites someone has during like a regular inspection, like a building inspection, or if they were to get their permit, they would have to say that many. So we could determine if they are paying their fees or not.
Ish.
Yeah.
Like mostly on the honor system, unless, and then subject to like an inspection by the town, an audit, or how does that work?
Yeah, I guess if we didn't feel like someone was being honest with what they were presenting us, we could go in and count their beds.
do we have some kind of, this is a lot of money, so I'm just gonna kind of ask about this for a second. Do we have some sort of spreadsheet that indicates the lodging business and like the annual lodging fees that we've collected from each establishment?
Yes, we keep track of that. Yeah. And where they're at and their payments.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Kelly can send it out to y'all if you'd like. Okay.
Is that public information? Or is that trustee public information? I guess what I'm asking. I think it's public.
Yeah, that could be public.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you want, I can pull it up.
I had one other question about this, if we're still on this topic.
Mhm.
Jim brought up, this has been like a long time ago, so Jim, maybe I have this wrong, but I think it was you who brought up that lodging fees were going to be, it's contrary to what it says in the resolution here, but put towards like a beautification account, a fund, allocation. Is that a thing?
It was told to me that the original purpose of the $2 bed tax was for that exact topic and subject.
I'd say
Previous
just-
board,
Sorry, go ahead, Jim. Sorry, my bad.
previous board members had indicated that, Sally, yes.
And I'd say it's not necessarily contrary to that in the language on the slide. It's just allowed to be much more broadly used than that, because beautification falls under building and grounds, I think.
Or it could, or potentially it could be marketing. I guess what I mean is it's not specifically named or called out in this resolution, but I could see how we could tuck it into it. I'm just wondering if that's something for us to address or discuss as it relates to lodging fees.
What would you like to discuss further about it?
Do we have town beautification? I like the idea.
We
Well, I
don't
think,
currently have a line item.
I think when you see the flowers and the pots in the middle of the street, I believe that's a part of the beautification process.
And being funded with the lodging fee money.
I believe so.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's going into the general fund and we're paying for it and we're not going into debt over it, but it may not be as intentional as it originally was established.
It's probably not, since most things go into the general fund. But I think it's finding its way to its purpose through the
Okay.
general fund. That is long before you and I.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I know. I thought I remembered it being, I thought I remember you'd make a reference to it earlier.
I mean, I would defer to Gloria on that one if she'd like additional clarification in a resolution about how the fees are to be used or some direction from the board. But if you feel pretty good about how everything flows right now, then.
Yeah, I feel good about how everything flows. I'll be honest, I did look into lodging fees because I was reading about what other communities were doing for affordable housing and how they could help offset their affordable housing. So I kind of started diving right into it. And that's kind of why I had this just ready to pull up and talk about when I was thinking about, our contract with the visitor center. And then I was like, well, I should probably show you all where that money comes from, and thinking about it in terms of like, so we have this line item that says 42,000. How are we paying for that? And I just kind of wanted to let you guys know how we're paying for it. Just informational and conversational.
Next slide.
Yeah, it's really informative and I appreciate the deep dive here. And so then Gloria, as you were doing that investigation, did you then come to the conclusion that the lodging fee income minus the amount that we allocate for the visitor center does not help us much with affordable housing?
Well, I
Or
didn't.
where are you
find-
headed with that now?
I wanted to see how much we had extra, and we don't have as much as I thought. So I kind of stopped pursuing that one.
Okay, got it. I like the train of thought.
That's why I always have changes on Mondays, because I think about things over the weekend and then have to change it. All right, so we'll move on. Is everyone okay to move on? Okay, so we're gonna move on to shared services. So costs between the town and the county were split. Sheriff's office is a little different than the other three below it, because we have different contract for that. So it's a 60-40 split, 60 town, 40 county. And then planning director is a 50-50 split according to our IGA, our intergovernmental agreement. And then the building and fire inspector is a 50-50 split minus the building permit revenue that we receive. And I'm going to show you all how this breaks down on the next slide, but just kind of wanted to give you a high level overview. And the fire department's 50-50. And then San Juan Development Association, I threw them in as a shared services since we both utilize them and have been utilizing them quite a lot this year, actually. And they had requested 5,000 from us and 5,000 from the county. So again, traditionally in the past, the accountability has been reviews with proposed budget that they give us and then the actuals. So that is the total amount requested based off last year's fire and ambulance budget. I just received the fire budget today, not to the fault of Gilbert. He did send it to me on Friday. It went straight to my spam. So I just got it today. So this would be the town's total responsibility within that shared services, just to kind of give you an idea of where these little chunks of the pie are. Any questions there?
Just a quick question. Now that we have a planning department, are those still at 50-50, or didn't we make an agreement with the county to take on more of the additional costs as we expanded?
We have not made any agreements with the county to take on additional costs. And so Clark is 100% town. As our assistant planning director that we have right now is 100% town.
Got it. So it's 50-50 just for the role of planning director. We didn't expand to 50-50 for the whole department.
Correct. And after talking to the administrator, Tukey, I was informed that they probably wouldn't be splitting the new building and fire, our succession plan, basically. So the new position that we were hoping to have, or are hoping to have with the building and fire inspector would be taken on solely by the town.
And are there services that the current building and fire inspector provides to the county that they would then need to staff themselves as well?
Well, so now this is an interesting, and this is something that we are still negotiating at this point. And Willie's off this week, but next week we will pick up our negotiations again. But what I'm seeing is that the understudy, I'm gonna be calling this the understudy for Bill, would be primarily town. And would be focused on town. Now, when he retires, we would probably go back to that one person with that 50-50 split.
Got it.
So this would be the town taking on the burden of kind of the succession planning and this new position for the first part of the year, and then hopefully reverting back to this 50-50 split.
Got it. I'm guessing there's places that the county has done similar things for the town, so that doesn't seem inequitable.
But we can still negotiate.
Okay. Trustees, any other questions about that slide, or is everybody good?
I keep trying to change it on my computer. Thank you. So this is a breakdown and this is what I could find. So I am still doing my investigations, just being 5 months into this and trying to figure out where all the money has come from and where it goes. But so the ambulance and the fire are based off of last year's numbers, but the planner, the building inspector, code enforcement, well, we don't have one. And the carriage house is all this year's, or basically this year's numbers that I was given. So after it shakes out, we technically, like, it would be what they owe us, what we owe them. We would just pay them 10,000 in the end. And that's kind of traditionally what we've done. I'm not really sure what happened in 2020. I was still investigating that one. As you can see, I highlighted those that are left blank, and then all of a sudden it said that we owed them 86. So I'm still investigating this, but I was hoping that this might give you kind of an idea of how we split things up. Any questions on that? Thanks, Jim. All right, so we'll go on to membership dues. So another way that we give money to other organizations is we receive a service in return for annual dues. So Southwest Colorado Council of Governments has been helping with broadband, as well as organizational infrastructure, as I have asked them for everything from their purchasing policies to looking into starting a housing authority. I'm leaning on them pretty heavy. Region 9 Economic Development, Small Business Development Center, Colorado Municipal League. And so all of these listed here, I want to point out that there are organizational dues for specific professions for each department that aren't included in this, but this is kind of like a big town-wide, what we receive town-wide. So that Colorado Association of Ski Towns, Snowmobile Association in Downtown Colorado Incorporated. This is all stuff that we receive kind of town-wide, and it's not specific to one department, and it kind of helps you wrap your head around each segment as I segmented them out. Questions on this one? Concerns? Okay, next slide. And then finally, nonprofits, and we dove into this last time. So just wanted to put this one in here as kind of to complete what I'm talking about as far as organizations that we give to or potentially give to. So that's total request is $34,750. As you can see in the 2022 draft budget that I included in the packet, I had put partner organizations, I think that's the line item, it's called, up to $40,000 to give a buffer if you all needed. And just kind of wanted to point that out. That's why it's different.
Great.
All right. Okay, so now that we're talking about the budget, wanted to point some stuff out to you. So if we think about, if you saw the budget and one of the pages, if you see that we have what I'm calling an elective deficit. So thinking about these projects that we have been talking about, Columbine Park, Kendall Deck, these kind of deferred maintenance that we've been wanting to address, I threw those into the budget. I also reduced our sales tax by 10% from 2019 actuals. A conservative, I think it's a really conservative estimate of our income. Go ahead.
The question was, did you happen to look at, and I just thought of this, so if this wasn't something that was discussed before, it just was an idea I just had, but have we looked at what our largest budget fluctuations have been from one year to the next over like the last 15 years? Like, has there been any like massive, like when we had the fire once in the drought year, like what's the largest point to point difference we've seen, whether down or up?
So right in front of you, you have kind of an idea of the general fund revenue and expenditures, but is that not in the presentation, or is that not something that?
I guess yeah, I mean, those numbers are probably could give us that answer. So from one year to the next, like what's been our biggest revenue jump up or down? And it looks like 2019, from 18 to 19 was the biggest up, and then 19 to 20 was the biggest down, except it's looking like 21 to 22 could be like another big up again, but.
Yeah, so I can put that into a graph for you at some point. Trying to think about.
The reason I'm asking is if we're gonna estimate conservatively that we could see up to a 10% decrease in revenue next year, is there precedent for that with some other type of, like the train didn't run, there's a fire, the road was closed for a long time? Has anything else ever dropped us down? COVID, has anything else ever dropped us down that much before? Or has it been way more than that? So do we know how conservative or not that 10% estimate might be? And maybe we're looking back like even further, like the year that, you know, in 91 to 92 or something like that. I'm just curious if we've ever seen changes that were greater than 10%.
Well, I think if I were to look at this as far as the general fund revenue and expenditures, that would be a really good indication of, well, you know, we had an unprecedented year where we had a fire, let's say that, and other things, and then our general fund expenditures would be way higher than our revenue, because technically we wouldn't be receiving that revenue. But even through this, I mean, 2019 was just a very successful year, I would say. And that's 2021 to date. So, and that was to date in July. So you can imagine those numbers are going up as well. And then what we have predicted for 2022. But I see where you're coming from there.
I mean, it sounds like a good number, but I'm just wondering if there's data to support 10% being like really conservative, or like it's pretty conservative, but we could blow through that number.
And that's kind of why I took it off the 2019 numbers, is seeing this trend of going, you know, more and more sales tax. And I decided that, you know, we would take that 2019 as like, yeah, we'll probably hit that number, but let's take some away just in case.
And then just one other clarification, the 2020 to date is really 2020 through August, because
The 2021.
Sorry, 2021 to date is through August, because we're 2 months in arrears and we probably haven't done our
That is correct.
September numbers for November since today's the 1st.
Mhm.
Okay, so we still have 4 more months to add up to the 2021 numbers.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
That helps me understand that a lot better.
Any other questions on that? I do have some more points to point out. Molly?
Yes. Okay, so quite a bit there. You can't go back and look at anything prior. I mean, you have to go back prior to 2013 if you want to see historical data that on bad years without a second source of income, which was when the OHVs were first allowed into the community. So that gives you that historical marker. And then that is also when, I believe in 2014 is when we created the additional tax. It was a 1% tax. So for the initial ambulance services tax, or EMS, I'm sorry, it's not just for the ambulance, it's for all of the EMS associations. So you have an increase there as well, because we also increased the tax dollars. And then you had that second bump, which was another 1.5%. So you've got to put that all into perspective when you're looking at all of this. And then even though you say we have 4 months that we're collecting left within this year, you've got to stop and take out the last 2 months because they will be shown in a 2022. Even though they were from 2021, they actually get counted in the line items as to start of 2022. So we've got to remember that too. You don't actually get all of the funds within that year, so you don't reflect it properly either.
So we're reflecting
that's
November
it.
and December from 2020 and the 2021 numbers already is what you're saying as well.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I get that. Thank you. Molly, did you have anything else?
No, those are the points
Okay,
those are the
thank
points I
you.
wanted to touch on.
Great. Sally?
Kind of to Molly's point, and Molly, I might have missed it, but do we know what year we started collecting the sales tax from internet sales?
It's this year
2020.
or last year?
No,
No,
that
it's more
started,
recent. I
that
mean,
was
it's later than that.
that was Wayfair versus the United States. That started in 2019. That's why we got a extremely ridiculous, like 50 grand extra 1 January, and we could not figure out what it was. We had Mr. Ryder hold it back and save it, keep it in a separate account. So just in case the state decided to give it back or wanted it back from us, that we didn't spend it and throw it into general funds, because the number was ridiculous for the time frame. So I think the explanation that was finally given was it was a slight combination of what had come through the county, and it was an approximation that was due. So now all internet sales are tracked and done by zip code. So there's a huge database now. And I believe, Gloria, now that we have signed our own, I can't remember what we called it. Good Lord. So we can actually see our own taxes.
Yes,
Gloria
I can
has
see it
access
now.
to that now, and we don't have to, we don't have to rely on the county. So all of those numbers and that data exist for us to, as trustees, if need be, it is available. So
Great.
you can go back and look at that historically and see when that internet, because that does all change the dynamic of how much money we're receiving. So how many people shopped more online in 2020 because of COVID? I mean, that was the way everybody was receiving everything. So did that drop again in 2021? Will it go up again? We can't know, because there's no product available anywhere on the planet. So it might drop again because it's not as accessible to have things shipped in again. So, I mean, we're just all it's a quandary at the moment with the planet, the way it's all broken. So hope that answers your question, Sally.
Yeah, thanks so much, Molly.
So I wanted to point out a couple of the line items that brought us to what I'm calling an elective deficit of about $436,000. So one of them is in parks. Well, I'll actually start from the top there. I guess that is starting from the top. Here it is. All right, so the first one is our grant expenditures under grants, and it says 40,000. This is our match for the master plan that we approved. Next, going on to the building inspector, we have about 50,000 here that we would be taking on and not splitting with the county. And then going over to park maintenance, we have 130,000 for the Columbine Park. So that is thrown in there as well. So adding those up, that's about 320,000. And honestly, it was right on track and only about a $30,000 deficit until I took away 10% of our revenue. And that's when we went into that larger deficit. And so I'm sure you're wondering, like, how much can we spend down our fund balance and still have and I'm saying healthy 6 months reserve. That's being very conservative with our money. Like, we as state requires us to have 3 months reserve. So if we spent about $500,000, we could, and reinvested it back into the community, we could spend that fund balance down and still have a very healthy reserve. I would like to stay at the 6-month reserve, just given the nature of where we live and not knowing really, I think it would be beneficial to keep that kind of 6-month reserve if we could. But I want to give you guys an idea of basically this kind of bottom line that we're looking at in our general fund. Any questions?
Yes. I think the 6-month reserve target sounds awesome. A question I have is, do we want to formalize the idea of targeting a 6-month reserve, and in years where we have excess budget that we could spend down, even if it takes us to a deficit, to bring us down to a 6-month reserve? Like in this example, we have $430-something thousand of deficit, but you're projecting out another like $98,000 of still being above our 6-month reserve.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to spending that delta, do we want to commit those funds to future deferred maintenance or the sewer plant project and start putting like any delta we have away? Because wouldn't the like general policy idea be that we should be using taxpayer dollars as productively as possible, and that just putting them in like a savings account or a checking account wouldn't be the best, us being the best stewards of taxpayer dollars?
Yeah, and I see where you're going with that. And that's actually something that I would love to set up next year for a capital improvements program. And I've been talking to Dolo about how to do that. The other organization I was in already had one. So I thought that was everywhere, but it's not. So I would love to create one here where we go out to the community and we say, look, these are our assets. Where would you like to see this money spent? And really bringing the community involved in that kind of creation of a capital improvements program, I think would be amazing. We don't have the capacity in the small time. I'm still just diving into this budget, but I would love to see that next year.
Awesome. And is that how other communities create those capital improvement funds? Is saying like, we always target to end the year with a 6-month reserve. This year we have in a bigger community, maybe like $900,000 that we didn't spend. So we'd like to go ahead and budget that $900,000 towards a capital improvements fund. Or
so typically you've already had that line item budgeted. So you know that every year you're going to spend that $10,000 that's going to go towards the ADA ramp at the visitor center. And you know that in 4 years, you're going to be able to pay for it. So typically that's kind of how those capital improvements are structured. But I don't know how they're initially started off with, like maybe we say we put this much into to start off with, and then going forward, we can put so much more in, so I'm still exploring that program, but would love to see it implemented here. And when I talked to Patrick about it, he's like, yeah, of course you need one.
So then so for the purposes of the 2022 budget, are we planning to have this deficit budget and then still have the budget reflect us have a cushion above the 6-month reserve? Or do you want to bring us all the way down to the 6-month reserve and allocate that difference to something? And
I would recommend going down to the 6-month reserve if we could, just to kind of spend down. As you can see, like the first graph I have there is our cash balance going up. And as you said, that's not very beneficial to our taxpayers if we just have money sitting in the bank and not utilizing it.
Okay, cool. And then the last question I had is the things that it sounds like we chose to spend money on in excess of budgets past are capital improvements, deferred maintenance, succession planning, and then nonprofit contributions.
Correct.
Would you recommend that whatever excess we have, we keep within those categories? Or is there something else that's been on the town's wish list that we haven't considered? Or do you want to think about that for our next meeting?
I have some stuff in place and I'm hoping to have an answer for you by the next meeting.
Cool. That's awesome. I think those are all my questions. If other people would like to jump in at all. Sally?
Thanks. This seems like a really privileged position for us to be in as a town. I don't want to take it for granted that we are able to fund all of the requests and the shared services and the contracts. I just, that seems, I don't know if it's not unprecedented, but it feels like a place of privilege. And I just wanted to note that, and it makes it a lot easier.
I think you just covered your microphone. You got muted.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Hearing from everybody from the nonprofit presentations, I was concerned that we'd have to say, no to one of them or something. And I'm glad that we don't have to do that. And I also think, like I said before, that those organizations create really nice pathways for us to reinvest money in the community and get it into the hands of partners who have the bandwidth and the structures in place to do really positive things for the community. And so I very much support that direction that we're headed and getting money back out into the community. And I think just in the long term, I think, Gloria, the strategic planning that you're referring to and thinking about capital funds or even just processes and structures that can support us as trustees or future trustees in this role to help us have a strategic approach to spending in the community. And, potentially, like, I think this has to have a link to the master plan at some point, or some sort of I think the master plan will hopefully help guide us through prioritizing and, the spending versus saving ratio that we have to consider going forward. So we don't, spend little bits here and then miss out on capital investment opportunities in the future versus holding on to taxpayer money for too long and not getting back out into the community. So I just wanted to recognize that both things are happening and also to express the support for what we're doing this year, because I think it's a really good use of funding that we definitely have.
Thanks, Sally. Cool.
Yeah, so I'm researching a grant right now and there might be a matching component to it. So as soon as I get the finalization that we actually qualify for it, I will bring it to your all attention, but it does have to do with affordable housing. So I'm trying to hit all your trustee goals here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking with the master plan. And I guess for us, we have our own trustee goals, but I mean, a spreadsheet comes to mind of just where we don't have to try and brainstorm on the spot, where we have this bank of wish list items or, long-term goals, middle-term goals, just something so that we're not on the spot thinking what else should we do? Or what else should be funded?
I definitely agree. Let's be very strategic about it moving forward. So that was kind of my big presentation for you all. I don't think I have any other slides, right?
That's not mine.
Yep. All right. Any other questions or concerns regarding the budget?
I think Tyler, Jess, Jim, or Jordan, any questions, thoughts? Sorry.
I'll just echo a lot of what Sally and what you said, Shane. I've heard from a lot of citizens in town that have said that if there's a budget, they would like to see their tax dollars going to work rather than being sat on. So I would look forward to having a capital improvements fund also and really support that if we are running a surplus and making sure that those are going towards projects that the community really values and wants us to move forward on. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
This is great. Thank you very much. There's clearly a lot of work went into this by you and staff, and thank you.
Mhm. All right.
Cool. If there's nothing else, it looks like our next meeting's coming up on November 8th. And we can go ahead and adjourn this work session. Good night, everyone. The time's 8:25 and this work session is adjourned. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Have a good night. Thank you, Gloria and staff.